would like to introduce you the last dear guest from Vienna Metal Lab. She's Kyra, and she will have a very interesting presentation about her trip to Syria, and then not only to Syria, but about free and open technologies and using educating these technologies.
Interactive media.
Okay, so enjoy our presentation.
Thank you very much. Can I maybe get some light? I guess you guys can't see me at all. Alright. Ladies and gentlemen, good evening. It's a great pleasure to be here. Thank you so much for having me. I'm going to briefly talk about something that we call the Inanna project. And the Inanna project is an experiment in art, technology, and the transformative power of free hardware and free software. Basically, this is about a workshop that I did together with a friend of mine on interactive storytelling. And it was a tech workshop for women artists that we ran last summer in Damascus, in Syria. My name is Karin Kozina. My friends call me Kyra. You're all encouraged to call me Kyra as well. You're Hackerspaces people. You can reach me by email at kyra@kyra.net. I'm also going to be here all evening, so if you want to chat with me afterwards, just come see me. Here's my PGP fingerprint. You probably can't see it, but those of you who use PGP, let's exchange fingerprints afterwards. I did this workshop together with a lovely woman by the name of Stephanie Buschitz. She's fantastic. Unfortunately, she cannot join us tonight due to urgent family matters, but she said I should say hi. So greetings from Stephanie, who was one of the two crazy people who did that workshop. Maybe I should say a few words about us. So Stephanie, actually, she's an artist. She studied interactive, she studied at the University of Applied Arts in Vienna and then also in New York, and she spent a year in Sweden, and she does really, really interesting stuff. So she uses these mobile sound and video installations. Thank you very much. And Stephanie also started something that is called Miss Balthasar's Laboratory, which is a workshop for female artists to get together and work on projects together. And that's something that takes place regularly at the Media Lab, and at the moment Stephanie is working on her doctorate at the Visual Cultures Unit at the University of Technology in Vienna. I myself, I come more from a technical side. I'm a hacker first and an artist second, so to speak. I studied media technology and design in Austria at the University of Applied Sciences in Hagenberg, spent 1.5 years living in Norway. I'm an advocate for free software and free culture, and I'm particularly interested in how technology influences society. And all these transformations you can see in the world, are they helped by new technologies that we have? What are the benefits that we can get from these new technologies? Can they be used to create a freer and more fair and just and democratic world? And at the same time, what are the dangers of those new technologies? So that's sort of what I'm specializing on. I'm currently studying at the Diplomatic Academy in Vienna, so I'm doing international studies master's degree. And my aim is to combine these two fields, technology and basically international relations, and see what can be done with that. So why would anybody want to do interactive storytelling, or what do you even mean by that? Interactive storytelling is a new art form, or a relatively new art form. And the idea is, if you have art in the classical sense, you view it or you listen to it, you expose yourself to it, but then there's still a distance between you and the piece. The idea of interactive media art is that this wall is broken down. You actually interact with the piece. You have to actually allow yourself to be part of the installation. So it's a very, very interesting thing. You create installations where the viewer stops being a viewer and starts being an active component of what's happening. which is, I think, a very, very exciting thing. And of course, it's something where Austria has, for many, many years, been on the forefront of the development. I guess you're all familiar with the Ars Electronica exhibition, the Ars Electronica Festival. So it's sort of obvious that we would do this. So that's the first question. The second question that everybody asks is, of course, why the heck do this in Damascus? Why go to Syria doing this? Well, our reasons for this were quite simply that both Stephanie and I have closeness to Syria. We both spent some time there. We love the country. We absolutely adore the people and the culture itself. Also, what's very interesting in the context of interactive storytelling is that Syria and the Middle East in general has this fantastic storytelling tradition. Actually, in Damascus, there's this guy, his name is Abu Shadi, and he still upholds the original storytelling tradition in the Dar al-Nofra cafe. So every evening he sits down and tells a story, the same way that this has been done for thousands and thousands of years. So this storytelling tradition was something that interested us particularly. How can we combine the new technologies and this ancient tradition and try for a new form of storytelling? And actually, what's quite interesting about Syria, which probably a lot of people don't know, Syria has a very vibrant new contemporary art scene. So there's a lot of stuff going on, a lot of video art and things like that. However, they haven't really done interactive installations a lot or at all. So we thought it would be quite interesting to introduce this to people and see what they come up with. So what we did was we went there and we gathered together 12 artists from all kinds of different backgrounds. So we had architects, we had photographers, we had a sculptor, we had painters, we had somebody working at the TV studio. So really all kinds of very, very different people from different branches of art, none of whom had any particular connection to technology. And we taught them how to use microcontrollers and we taught them how to use programming. And then the idea was, let's build some projects, let's play around with this stuff and see what we can come up with. So one of the technologies we used was Arduino. Who of you is familiar with Arduino? Quite a few, as I would have expected. Arduino is fabulous, right? I mean, most hackerspaces basically run on Arduino. I'm sure most of your blinking things also have an Arduino behind them. Arduino, this is the baby. It's an open source electronics prototyping platform. The awesome thing about Arduino is it's like really easy to use hardware and software. It's made specifically for people who don't have prior knowledge of working with microcontrollers. If you guys, each and every one of you, have never used an Arduino or looked at one, go check it out. It's a fantastic, fantastic, fantastic platform. It makes it so easy to get started, to do physical computing, actually interacting with the physical world. It's amazing. Like the first time you actually write a little program and something happens, like even just an LED that blinks, it's like, oh my god, I did this? It's amazing. So go check it out, it's really, really lovely. What you have is, this one is the DT Mila. It has 14 digital in and out pins and 6 analog input pins, so you can get information from the world. It has a 16 megahertz crystal oscillator. We have 16 kilobytes of flash and 512 bytes EEPROM. And the nice thing is, this little board that you get here contains everything that you need to use this microcontroller. So you need nothing else. You plug it into your computer using a USB cable or a serial cable. But usually people use USB because that's more common these days. And you can talk to this thing. And what you can do with the Arduino is basically you can use it for two things. One is you can use it to get input from the world. So you can use it to get sensor data. So for instance, you can say you have a movement sensor. When something moves, something physical happens, then you want to react to that. Or you can say you have whatever, temperature sensor, or you could say you want to measure conductivity. So if you touch something, then obviously conductivity of that thing will change. So you would get, again, this information and you can respond to it, which is what you want to do if you want to do interactive storytelling, interactive media art, because you want to have some way of having your audience interact with your piece. And the other thing you can do is you can not only get input in, but you can also give output. So you can use the Arduino to control things in the world. You can have a little motor that moves things around. You can change the light and what have you. So that's the two things you want to use an Arduino for. And I can't praise it enough. It's really a fantastic platform. And the best thing about it, it's completely free. It's free software. It's also free hardware. All the designs are online, so you can download all the schematics. You know exactly what's going on, and that's very, very interesting because a lot of platforms don't give you that flexibility and that openness. So that's the one thing we did. The other thing we looked at is processing. Who of you has done anything with processing? Okay, that's fewer. Are any of you those processing people, progress bar people? Are you here regularly? Fantastic, I task you. Please do a workshop on processing. People need to know about it. It's a marvelous framework. You like it?
Yeah.
See. Okay, so what's your name?
Yeah.
Yura. I don't see you because I'm blinded. I really just see. I'm like. Okay, Yura. Hello, nice to meet you again. Yura is going to do a workshop on processing, and it's absolutely fantastic. So basically what this is an open source programming language and environment. It's specifically designed for people that haven't really necessarily gotten a lot of programming background, so artists and designers, or perhaps people who do have a programming background but not a visual programming background, so haven't really done much with graphics and so on. And this gives you a very easy way to work with images and with sound and with animations and videos. So it's a very nice way of quickly prototyping animations, but you can also make finished works in it. And the nice thing about this is it gives you 2D, it gives you 3D, it's cross-platform, it runs on anything, and it has this very, very nice IDE that comes with it. It's a Java-based thing, so if you know Java, you can immediately use it. If you don't know Java, you can quickly learn it because they simplify things for you. So you don't have to do all this import framework for blah, 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 but you just start typing and you get this. So this is what the IDE looks like. It's very similar to what you get when you use Arduino. This is a very, very simple program. This is the program to load an image and display that image, right? So I'm aware that in a presentation showing code is sort of like the equivalent of in an economics presentation showing an Excel sheet, but I figured these few lines, everybody can bear it, right? And this gives you this. It just pops up the window and shows this image of my nice little cat. The interesting thing is trying to do this in OpenGL. You know, it's going to be 100 lines at least. So this is the complete code to open a window, draw a black background, load the image and display the image in a specific place. So you see it's really, really, really very straightforward. And it's again made specifically for people who don't necessarily have a background in computer science but want to be able to do animations, which is exactly where our artists come into the picture, right? Because you don't want people to have to take a 4-year computer science education before they can start doing animations. So that's the second framework that we used. We have Arduino and we have processing, and we had this workshop where we basically showed this to people and explained it to them, and then tried to come up with some ideas for how we can try and use these technologies and play with them and come up with some projects we can do. So we did that workshop, and we had this fantastic place, this old Arabic house in the old town of Damascus, where there's this, like in this typical Arabic houses, you have these courtyards, because it's really hot. This was June. It was probably 35 degrees Celsius minimum all the time. So we had this courtyard where we could just sit, and it was really, really nice. And what was fantastic was how everybody went into it with so much enthusiasm. It was unbelievable. Like, these are the girls we were working with. They just had so much fun. It was such an amazing atmosphere. And it's maybe one of the reasons why I love working with people from the Middle East so much, because the attitude is very different. If I do the same workshop in Austria, people would be much more, well, let's see where this goes, you know, just try to stay cool and be very skeptical. Whereas the ladies we were working with just jumped into it and were like, okay, this is awesome, let's do it. And even though they had never used any of these technologies before, right? So we just did some brainstorming, just came up with some ideas. This was basically our collection, what are we going to do? We had really no idea what it's going to be. We only had 1 week, and we had these grand plans what we're going to do. And it's crazy, if you've ever done any kind of installation, you can't do anything in 1 week. It's no time whatsoever. But we were like, yeah, we can do this. Awesome. So we went ahead and did it. This was the room where we did the teaching. It was completely chaotic all the time. You can see the creative chaos, lots of stuff flying around, but it was a lot of fun. And so this was people starting to use Arduino. This was one of the first things we did, just attach a potentiometer so you can see that you can actually get the input. So you have this knob and you turn it, and then you'll get different input values on your input. And then based on this, you can react to it. And it was really interesting to see how these people who had never used technology at all found their own way of finding access to it, in a way. So this was a very interesting experience for us as well, to see how can you present things in such a way that people are not scared of it. One of the problems that you see if you try to teach people who don't know about or don't know a lot about technology is that they're afraid of touching things because they might break it, right? It's kind of like there's this distance. And one of the goals that we had was breaking down that distance and just encouraging people to play around and experiment and have fun and see what they can come up with, which is very much the hackerspace's philosophy, if you think about it, right? So we built stuff, we built more stuff, and we were all very happy when something worked. And one of the things that was also really, really great was how they immediately started collaborating and working together and helping one another out. So nobody really had a clue why things didn't work, but they figured it out together. One of the fun things about working with hardware is that you don't have GDB, so it either works or it doesn't. When it doesn't work, you're like, okay, well, where do we start? But it's a lot of fun, and we got everything to work in the end. So these were the ladies. So what did we create? We created basically 3 pieces. So in the end, we had this exhibition where we showed what we had done. And the first thing that we made was something called Fortune Cookie, which was quite a fun thing Anya came up with. So it's very dark in the picture, so you don't really see it, but it was, from a technological point of view, very simple. We just have a camera, you come in, the camera sees you, camera tracks you, so the camera realizes there's something moving, so it hooks onto you, and then it follows you. But then the interesting thing is it gives you a random fortune cookie. Sort of like, you know, like your future or something you should take into account. Like when you go to a Chinese restaurant and you have these fortune cookie things, right? And the funny thing was people didn't know what they would get because you just have some random things like whatever, you should go take a vacation or don't be so serious all the time. But what was interesting was this was made for one person, but if a second person come in, the system would figure out where there is more movement and it would give the fortune cookie to where things were moving faster. But we didn't tell people about it, so they had to figure it out. So one person goes in, and he's like, oh, this is really nice, and just looks at this, and like, oh wow, this fortune cookie thing follows me. And it was nice, because you saw people that were very serious. You know, we go to this exhibition now, everybody was like dressed up and very formal. And then suddenly they're like kids playing around, and like, woo! It's very, very lovely to see, and that's one of the good things about interactive installations, that you actually get people to step out of their normal persona. But then if a second person come in, they'd lose their fortune cookie, and you'd see like people trying to figure out how does this work, because they didn't understand that it's based on where there is more movement. So you have people just doing these crazy dances and trying to understand what's happening. It was so great because everybody had a really, really great time, but people also started to think, okay, what's going on here? How can I understand this? What are they trying to tell me? What's the artistic purpose of this? So it was quite fun. Second thing we did was something called jungle lights. Jungle lights, the idea was you take a bunch of stones, you take a bunch of LEDs, you take a bunch of wires, and you hang them from the ceiling. The stones are negative, the LEDs are positive, and basically people have to walk through, and when the positive and negative wires touch, the LED will light up. Very simple idea, a lot of work to build, but the idea was again that we wanted people to sort of be forced to interact with our art. So this was already at the entrance area, so you couldn't even come in there. And there was a buffet and everything, so people wanted to come in, right? But you had to go through this curtain of the LED things. It actually turned out really, really nice. So we had these stones that we wrapped up. And there was again Arduino behind it, like everywhere else. So in this case, actually, the Arduino didn't do anything except for power the whole thing with 5 volts. And then we hung all these things. You see here we had, on the LEDs we had ping pong balls. So the LEDs were inside a ping pong ball so that you'd have more diffuse light. And we hung them up, and this is what it looked like eventually in the end. And you don't see it very well here on these images, but basically, you know, when you went through, and people didn't notice again, so it was also really nice to see how they react. So you go through, you have to push them aside, and then you'll see that things start to light up randomly wherever, you know, wires are touching. It was very, very beautiful. And the last thing was something called the magic carpet. And the idea there was, one of the things that Stephanie and I are interested in is how can you improvise? because everybody can go and buy hardware and buy all kinds of advanced sensors if they have the money. And then a lot of the work that comes out of that is very, very boring, in that you just take what you have in terms of technology and build something around it, which is not very exciting. And usually it's much better if you have an idea and then you just improvise and you just build something based on what you have. This is again very close to the hackerspace's philosophy. You know, instead of being a consumer and okay, let's go out and buy things, is that what can we create? What can we build with what we have right here, right now? And the idea of this was we wanted to create our own sensors. We wanted to have a way of saying where you step. I want to see where you stand. So if this is the installation, you can be here, or you can move here, or you can move here, or here, or here. We want to track you. We want to figure out where you are, because then the music will change and the animation will change. How can you do it? And of course, the obvious thing is use a camera, but that's sort of too obvious. So what else could we do? And we had this idea, we're going to build carpets from old videotapes. So maybe some of you are old enough to remember VHS. Yeah, videotapes. These are magnetic, right? So you take videotapes, and some of them are more magnetic than others, some of them are more conductive than others. So these are the good ones. We're actually sitting there measuring conductivity of various kinds of VHS cassettes. And you take these videotapes and you create a carpet from them. So this was also very nice because it's a very traditional thing. We were sitting there, those 14 girls, the 12 Syrians and the 2 Austrians, weaving carpets from videotapes. And the idea of this was, again, that you have a positive charge not charge, but you put current through it. So you have a current on top, and then you have a grid below. And then when you step on it, of course, you'll shorten the way that the electricity has to go. So you'll have less resistance. So normally it just goes into the carpet and goes through and comes back. So you have fairly high resistance. However, if I step on it, I basically shorten it here, and the circuit is shorter, which means I have less resistance. I hook up an Arduino to that, and then I get a very nice input value that tells me basically roughly where I stepped, because it tells me, you know, resistance is going to be this if I stand here, and resistance is going to be this if I stand here. Of course, it's all very much a matter of calibration. We did a lot of that, and then it all changed because God only knows. But anyway, it was a lot of fun, and this is what they. I'm so sorry that the images are so bad. They look really nice. Yeah, maybe you can try. If you turn off the light for just a moment. That didn't help, did it? Thank you very much for trying, though. Okay. So this is what the carpets look like. You could step on them, and then you get changes in the animation. Okay, this is what we did. It was very, very hard, very, very hard. One of the main problems we had was the prejudices on both sides. You know, you have the artists being like, okay, you can't possibly create art with technology. It's like, it's cold, it's lifeless, it's boring, it's not going to work. You had technical people like myself being like, you know, these artists, they are very unstructured. I'm never going to be able to get them to finish this in time or to understand what the circuit looks like. We had the whole, of course, Austria, Syria, different cultures kind of thing. Like we said, let's meet at 9 o'clock in the morning. You know, people started showing up around 10 saying, okay, let's have a coffee first. It sounds ridiculous, but it's just a cultural difference. You know, I was just getting mad. Like, girls, we have this exhibition, we have to work. And they were like, why are you so angry at us? You know? So it's a different, and you also have to learn to understand that people function in a different way. And it's going to be great. But really people have different languages and different ways of communicating. And I actually have to say, I think the barrier between the artists and the hackers is greater than the barrier between the Austrians and the Syrians. So that was fun. We had a lot of creative chaos, a lot of last minute panic. And we had this exhibition. It was a kind of big thing, you know. We collaborated with the Austrian embassy in Damascus. They invited tons of important people. Of course, we couldn't possibly not have things ready by then. And the night before, nothing worked. Like literally nothing worked. We were there, we did the final test, and everything had broken down. And I thought, okay, just shoot me. I mean, this was so bad. And we just spent the night, you know, doing last minute fixes, and in the end it worked out. And then of course people had these wonderful Windows machines, and I'm not a Windows person. Stephanie's not a Windows person, and we were going crazy. So it was really a lot of challenges. But actually the results were really nice. We were very happy with what we got out of it. We had this nice exhibition in the end. We had national television come and show what we did and interview us, and he was in the news, and it was lovely. Everything worked, at least in the start. Of course, these wires got hopelessly tangled at some point, and nothing worked anymore. But people didn't know that it was supposed to light up, so they still liked it. They just thought, this looks really cool. So in the end, it was a win. I'd say the workshop was a huge success, not only in terms of the artworks that we actually created, because that was not our primary goal. Primary goal was to have this exchange, to learn from one another. The artists we were working with learned a lot about technology. They learned how to use Arduinos. They learned how to use processing. Specifically, they learned a new way of approaching things, which is a playful way of interacting with technology rather than one where you say, I'd rather not touch it because it might break. Stephanie and I learned a lot about how to do these kind of workshops. We also learned a lot from the ladies, just in terms of collaboration, in terms of staying calm. You know, because if you have a last minute problem, freaking out doesn't help you at all. And you know, but I would just go, they'd be like, okay, chill. Why don't we go get a coffee, have a cigarette, figure it out, you know? And you know, it actually helps to take that coffee and sit down for 15 minutes and take a step back. So I guess in the end I learned more from them than they learned from me. And the most important thing I think was the inspiration that we all got out of this. Because also these girls didn't know one another before, so they also learned a lot from each other, which was also a really, really good thing. So why did we do this? I mean, the one thing, see, now you have to light in your face as well. Everybody's like, see, now you see how I feel. Art and technology. It's one of those things that a lot of people think is a contradiction, where it actually isn't at all, right? So a lot of artists think maybe, you know, technology is lifeless, it's boring, and a lot of programmers would think, you know, artists, they're all just crazy people, they just make weird stuff, it's not interesting to collaborate with them. But on the contrary, you know, if you have art people and tech people who work together, you have a lot of inspiration, a lot of possibility for creating something really, really new. That's also one of the great things about hackerspaces, as you all know, that you bring people from different backgrounds together that can inspire one another. And you know, if you have people from a different background, everybody gets something new out of it, and a new idea can get born that otherwise would never have happened. I actually think that this compartmentalization, you know, I'm a programmer, I'm an artist, I'm a philosopher, I build robots. This over-compartmentalization is one of the greatest ills of our day and age. It's one of the worst things that we, humanity, have done to ourselves, and I think we have to get away from that. You know, as Robert Heinlein put it, specialization is for insects. I very much believe in that. I very much believe that everybody benefits from exposing themselves to new ways of thinking, new ways of approaching things, and collaborating with people that are different, that have different ways of thinking. It's a lot of work because you have to expose yourself to a new way of thinking and challenge your own maybe too compartmentalized way of approaching things, but it's very, very useful. The other thing that was interesting about what we did there was, of course, the whole women and technology thing, because in so many places, of, frankly, all over the globe, it's still considered a guy thing, right? I mean, girls don't hack, and that's, of course, complete BS, right? So the question is, how can you encourage girls to approach technology? Because once they do, they realize this is actually awesome. But they wouldn't maybe do it on their own because they don't realize that it's going to be fun. So a lot of it is about overcoming fears. A lot of the girls said afterwards that they were like, oh my god, I'm never going to be able to solder something. And of course they were, and they had a lot of fun. But before, they never thought they would enjoy it. I think one of the big challenges here is how can you present things in such a way that it's interesting for somebody who doesn't have a prior background in technology. Like, a lot of girls don't have that background, but how can you do it without dumbing it down? Because a lot of the initiatives, you know, girls and technology, they are like technology for handicapped people. You know, you're a girl, but despite of that, we'll help you understand this. And then it's like dumbing it down, and of course no self-respecting woman would have anything to do with that. So that's a bit of a challenge, but it's again very, very worthwhile to do. And then of course the final aspect of the whole thing is the free software and the free culture aspect of this. This is, by the way, our cat. She was living at the house, and she was an active participant of the workshop. She was fantastic. She was so curious. I was like just playing with all our installations, and of course messing things up hopelessly, but we all loved her. She even wrote a regular expression for me. At some point, she just jumped on my lap while I was coding, and she just like boom, boom, boom.
Programming in Perl.
Yeah, it was marvelous. Yeah. Anyway, so the whole why free software? Why do we have this emphasis on we have to use Arduino, we have to use processing? And the point of this is, of course, from an artistic point of view, you want to use open source things because you don't want to be limited by what the medium gives you. So a lot of artists use closed source tools because those are easily available, but at the end of the day it limits you. There comes a point where you want to do something that the tool doesn't give you and you're stuck. Right? Now I don't expect artists to actually go and themselves change the tools that they use, but they could always find a programmer that can change them for them if you have open source. If you have closed source things, proprietary tools that you're using, you're stuck at some point. Of course, one of the things that we also wanted to do, and especially I personally, was to introduce artists who normally don't have very much contact with the concept of free software itself to the concept, and get them to start thinking about it. The whole free software, free culture approach is very close to art, if you think about it, because there's this whole idea of remixing, right? Of starting with somebody else's work, being inspired by what somebody else has done, and then building on top of that. And that's also part of demystifying the whole technology thing. Because if technology is something you buy in a black box and you can only use it, that creates fear. It's like, this thing, I would never understand it. But if you have something that's actually open, you can say, well, maybe you don't understand it right now, but if you took the time and looked at it, you would understand it, and you would be able to understand every single bit in that thing. That's also one of the great things about free software and free hardware. And of course, the final point is that both Stephanie and I have a very anti-consumerist attitude, so to speak. So one of the things that is important for us is don't just be a consumer, be a creator. Step outside of your box. Don't sit around wait for somebody to sell you something. Go and create something yourself. Play around. Try and change things. Try and tell your story, whatever your story is. And if you want to genuinely, freely express yourself and be creative, you ultimately need a free framework in which to do that. Okay, so that's basically it. Once again, let me summarize this. This was a project done by Stephanie and by me. What we did is we tried to encourage women to learn about technology and play with technology. We tried to encourage artists to experiment with something new, which is technology. And we tried to encourage people to express themselves and tell their stories. I mean, did we change the world with this? Certainly not. Did we slightly change the world for a few people? Certainly yes. And that's maybe my ending note, right? This is actually important. Don't get frustrated. I mean, you can't always do things that are just, people ask me, why do you do that? What difference does it make that 12 girls in Damascus have now worked with Arduino? Well, it makes a difference to them. And at the end of the day, that's what counts. You can't change the world for everybody, but maybe you can do some small thing with what you have right here, right now. And at the end of the day, that's what really matters. So thank you very much. And I'd like to thank these people who were at the workshop.